Welcome everybody. In this tutorial series, I'm going to show you how to make a tip calculator for the watch here. Now, this may seem like a simple app, but the one major thing that I want to talk to you about in this tutorial is to find ways to not use a keyboard, because with the Apple Watch there's no keyboard. Now, this is actually really important because, with a phone or an iPad or a computer, you have a keyboard and you have something like 40 or 50 different keys to actually use with that keyboard. Especially with a Mac, you have to use you get to use the keyboard, and then with iOS you have the option of using the keyboard. But there might not be a situation in the future where you might not get to use a keyboard. For example, if you want to make an app for perhaps a car, right? Or if you want to make an app for the Apple Watch, or I'm just thinking farther into the future, something that has like glasses, like technological glasses or stuff like that. Well, you have to find a creative way to get the functionality of your idea out there without using a keyboard. And that's what this is going to be talking about. It's a fairly simple tutorial series, but it's very informative. All right, so let's go ahead and let's click next, and we'll call this tip calculator for watch OS2, and we'll go ahead and push Swift. Okay, go ahead and create that, and Xcode should pop up here, and this includes the tutorial. Welcome back. All right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to hop into the interface storyboard here, and this is where we're going to design the app. Now we have to literally drag out the items here, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to add in a label. So we'll just simply add in a label here, just like this. Okay, and we'll call this tip. Okay, tip. And there's a couple of things we could do here. We can make it 0.00, and what that will do is that will make sure that the tip is within the dollar format. And of course we have to set that up manually. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drag this label down here, and instead this tip is going to be total. Okay, and it's going to be 0.00. So what we're going to do is we're going to display the tip and display the total, just like that here. So tip and total, and then we'll also have the button here. Okay, and one thing that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that both of these items here are small enough so that we can fit two buttons. Okay, and I believe that is, if we click on this, yes, we can actually go and put two buttons here. We're going to say meal total, and this one we're going to say tip total. Okay, and while we're here, the meal total, for example, is we're going to estimate the tip. So let's say the meal total is something like $20, like that. And then the tip total is going to be 15%. Okay, so what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to change the meal total with the button, and we're also going to be able to change the tip total with the button as well. Now, this here is going to give us a precision answer, not a precise answer. So what's the difference? Well, have you ever seen one of those watches that only has the hour hand? They do exist, and some people like it and others do not, but the point is that the question is do you really need to know whether it's 2:32 and 44 seconds, or do you need to know whether it's 2:30? Okay, now this falls into that concept here, and that concept is very simple, that we're going to give a rough estimation for tips, because some people like to give a tip and they like to give it exactly down to the cent. If their tip comes to $23.42, they're going to give $23.42. Other people just round up. I'll just give the person $25. Okay, it's up to you what you want to do here. So this here will give us a very simple task of adding in the total here. So we're just going to simply add in a pre-selected amount of numbers here for both of these. And that's all it's going to be. And we're going to be able to calculate both of these as we go along. So to sum up, we're making a precision app, not a precise app. It's going to give you a rough estimate of how much you owe. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes to making something without a keyboard. Sometimes you might not need to get the specificity on the fly. This concludes the tutorial. Thing we need to do is hop into our viewcontroller.swift by opening up the system editor. Now I've gone ahead and I've closed some of the windows, and what we're going to do is we're going to have to literally drag over these items with our right mouse button in order for us to be able to print the text and to change the button text, as well as have code execute when we actually put in the button here. So first thing first, we're going to add in this outlet, and we're going to call this LBL tip. I put in the name of the object first so nothing is confusing. Okay, so this is going to be LBL tip, and then this one here is going to be LBL total. Okay, we're also going to add in two outlets with the button here. We're going to call this BTN meal total. Okay, BTN is of course for button. And then lastly here, we're going to add in one here. It's called BTN tip total. Okay, so the outlets, again, we will change the text of them. That's why we're dragging them out here. And we can also change other properties with them too. What we're also going to do is we're going to drag in this action here, and this action is going to be called BTN meal total action. And I'm putting in the action at the end just so that I know it is an action. Okay. Likewise with the tip total, we're going to say it's an action, and we're going to call this BTN tip total action. Okay. So there we go, and that actually works out quite well. Everything you can see here is set up. So now we can go and change the titles of these objects, as well as we have user interaction. This concludes the tutorial. The next thing we need to do is add in variables here. Now, as a general rule, we would add in variables for tip, total, meal total, and tip total. And what we do is we add in a variable for each item that we go ahead and for each outlet that we put in. So I'm going to add in a variable, and we're going to start off with the meal total and the tip total. So we're going to go to meal total. It's a float, and the reason why we're making it a float is because we want to use decimals here. And then we're going to add a variable called tip total, and we're also going to make it a float here. And the reason why we need to use decimals is because we're dealing with money, and money is usually dealt with decimals here. Now, one could make the argument that if we're making a precision app, we don't need the decimals, okay? But we're going to put it in here just in case. So precision, has a level. And by the way, that watch example that I talked about in a previous tutorial, it's kind of like a sundial. So it would be kind of a homage to timekeeping. So that's why some people use it as well. So that's something you can kind of play around with when it comes to design here. Now, what we did say is that we wanted to have a pre-selected amount of meal totals and a pre-selected amount of tip totals. Now, a variable is like a box you can put a piece of data in. An array is kind of like multiple boxes, kind of like an egg carton. So if we have variable, and we're going to call this tip, and we make that equal to, and the first number is going to, let's say, be $10. Okay, 10. And what we'll also do is I will copy. I'd say we can probably just put in the comma 10. Let's do 15, 16, 17, 18, and then we'll go to 20, 25. Okay, and you might be thinking that these are randomly placed numbers. Well, I'm trying to think of numbers that would be used in a tip. Okay, and 27, 30, and here is where they get more numerous here. 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, and then we're going to go 110, I'd say 120, 150, 150, 180, 200, and you have to think, do we really need all of these in here? Okay, so I'm going to just go up to 200. Okay, and there's a few of these we could probably get rid of. Like, for example, we could get rid of, we could probably get rid of these two here. Okay, so 10, 20, and 24. And what we're going to do is we're going to cycle in between these here. Okay, and you can see here that for the most part, this is going to be the tip here. And I think probably just going up by 5 might be the best, and then getting higher here. So you can get rid of a couple of these. And the other thing is that you need a comma in between each one, or else it won't like it. Alright, so I think that's probably good. Now let's count the indexes in an array. And index is like the item of array. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, that's a bit much, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to see if I can eliminate 3. Yep, 2, and then 3. And we might as well do that here, okay? So this is our, we could actually say that this is, and if we look at this here, we can call this meal cost instead of tip. And then we're added another array. We'll call this tip. Okay, and the tip we will have, and these will be in decimal format. We'll have 10%, 15%, 20%. Now, as a general rule, I always like to put the 0 in front. 20, 25, 0.25, and then one more 0, 0.3. Okay, so there's only going to be these amount of tip options here, and for the most part, I think this serves pretty much everything that we need to do. All right, this concludes the tutorial. Alright, so now that we have the meal cost, and now that we also have the variable set up, we need to go and add in a function here. Well, this function here, and this is where actually this particular app becomes really easy. This function here, okay, this function is going to be called calculate total, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to add in the function, so you type in function, calculate total, brackets, and then 2 curly brackets. And what's going to happen is we're just going to call calculate total, and the way that you make this code work is that you add in the calculate total like this here. And once you add in the calculate total, we're going to literally calculate everything. And when we push either button, it's going to calculate the total. Okay. We're also going to add in another function called print tip. Okay. And at the end of calculate, we'll print tip. Okay, and then we'll add in that functionality as it goes along. One thing you can do when you're first starting out programming is you can add in functions that you think you need and then add in the functionality and add in the actual code later. Okay, so it actually works out quite well. Now, let's take a look at what we need to do in order to calculate the total here. Well, first of all, we need to take the tip here, and we need to actually add in one more variable. We're going to call this variable meal button. That's, we can call this button meal number make that equal to an integer. And what this is going to do is it's going to be a counting number that's going to count up as every time we calculate. Okay, we'll add in another variable. We'll call this button tip number, make it an integer, and make it equal to 0. All right, so we have all of this here, and what we need to do is every time we add in or add to this here, we can go and add to the button. So let's add in a function called button number add, or button number addition. Okay, and this will add one to the button, and what we'll do is we'll call button number addition for both of these here. Or actually, we need to have two different functions. We'll call this button number meal total, and we'll add in another function called button number tip total, and we'll call them separately. Okay, so we'll call this button number meal total, button number tip total. Okay, so meal total, we're going to say that the button meal number is equal to the button meal number plus 1. And all that's going to do is it's going to add to 1 here. We're going to do the same thing for the tip number is equal to the button tip number plus 1. Okay? So that will add everything here, and then we can go ahead and calculate the total, but we have to figure out what the arrays are. Okay? This concludes the tutorial.